A group of archaeologists is seen exploring the vast desert in northern Africa. Suddenly, a series of explosions occurs, and the archaeologist seismograph registers the disturbance in the ground. The team then discusses the possible discovery of a volcanic vein, but another member argues that there are no volcanoes in the area, meaning a volcanic vein there is unlikely, and consequently, there are no diamonds. What the seismograph captured didn't make sense, so the trio decides to check the explosion site. As they approach the location, they find a kind of tribal totem made of sticks and bones. The trio pauses for a moment to observe the bizarre scene and then proceeds. Later, they arrive at the explosion site and see a large piece of sandstone with an unusual protrusion formation that isn't common in the desert. One of the archaeologists picks up a small pickaxe and strikes the sandstone to collect a sample. With each blow, he inadvertently creates a hole. Suddenly, a strange creature pulls the man inside, causing him to scream in terror. After that, the scene cuts to Vancouver, where we see a systems analyst and explorer named Zach receiving a temperature drop alert in a lab due to a system failure in a module in Antarctica. He and his assistant Mel quickly work on a solution to prevent the other scientists from freezing to death. With only seconds remaining, Zach takes a risk and instructs Mel to replace the system, stabilizing it and restoring the temperature, saving the scientists. His boss then approaches, hands Zach a plane ticket, and informs him that a different area is looking for a systems analyst. Later, we see a taxi dropping Zach off in the middle of nowhere, in the African desert, and driving away. He spots a place selling various strange materials, and with limited options, Zach asks the man if he has anything for a headache. To his surprise, the man hands him a very strong painkiller, exactly what he needed after a long trip. Soon after, a truck arrives, and the driver greets Zach, signaling for him to get in. They then arrive at a closed eland facility, a mining company located in the desert of Africa. Zach enters a station to check in at security and meets the receptionist Mickey and an older man. The reception isn't very warm, but he quickly adapts. After a while, two other men named Carl and Titus enter the room. Mickey begins to inspect Zach's luggage when she notices a strange device, which he himself calls Charlie. It's an underground analyzer whose main function is to locate water up to 300 meters deep. While Mickey looks for a journal, the older colleague shoves the journal into his pocket, drawing Mickey's attention and making inappropriate jokes. After that, Zach is notified that a group of miners is missing, and they will try to find them. During the journey, Mickey, Zach, and Carl are joined by Titus, Kurt, and Magda, each carrying their own weapons. Zach asks why so many weapons, and Carl explains that rebels try to attack them thinking they have diamonds. Once everything is ready, they depart and cross the inhospitable desert in search of their missing colleagues. After a few hours of searching, Mickey spots a truck. They approach and find two of their colleagues already dead, as if they had been exposed there for a long time, with their bones almost dry. Carl suspects that the third missing man might have been the murderer. Titus signals to the others that he found something. When they rush to his position, they see footprints and track the alleged murderer on foot. After a few moments, Titus makes a brief stop and tells Carl that when they started following the clues, there were 2 feet, but suddenly, now there are 4, indicating it began walking on 2 feet and then somehow started walking on all 4s, like a dog. Something very bizarre happened. Soon they arrive at a desolate place with several strange totems, like the one of the researchers was observing. Zach tries to touch the figure on the staff, but Titus gives him a tap on the shoulder, interrupting him and saying it is a warning sign. Then, Titus instructs everyone to move on. The team continues to follow the footprints until they find a skull and then a body. Kurt inspects the carcass and bones more closely, remembering that one of his missing colleagues had a motorcycle accident that left him with mobility issues. Kurt and Mickey think the corpse might belong to the third colleague, whom Carl suspected was the murderer of the other 2 that they already found, since one of the bones has a metal plate, indicating he underwent surgery, just like this third colleague. However, Carl doesn't believe it is his colleague's corpse and insists he must still be on the run. Magda asks Carl to stop the pursuit and deliver the fuel to camp, as per orders. They then decide to camp there, as nightfall is approaching. Late at night, the group is deeply asleep, except for Zach, who can't sleep, pondering how he ended up there, as he isn't a field analyst, but just worked in labs. To keep his sanity, he decides to sand surf in the middle of the night. At a certain moment, while he is distracted, he gets startled when Mickey appears and touches his shoulder, saying that the noise he was making and the constant beeping of his ground analyzer were preventing her from sleeping. She sits next to Zach and hugs him to warm up suggestively. After a brief conversation, Mickey returns to the truck. Then, Zach's meter lights up and starts beeping frantically. When he looks to the side, he sees a horrifying creature, so he manages to run back to the car and wake everyone up. Zach explains what he saw, and Mickey notices the corpse is missing. Carl suspects Zach and starts interrogating him about the whereabouts of the body, but Zach claims he didn't do anything. On the other hand, Titus whispers a strange word. When asked about it, Titus explains that it refers to a creature that he and his culture call Mother of Sand, which takes all lives to sustain itself and live eternally. Not only that, he says that this creature has the ability to turn them against each other, simply by separating them. The next morning, they follow a new trail, and when Kurt looks through the scope of his rifle, he sees a bizarre bipedal humanoid walking back and forth, almost like a shadow. Carl takes Kurt's rifle, aims at the creature that killed his friends, and fires. However, when he hits the creature, it completely disintegrates. The team goes over and finds only bones. No one can explain what that was, except for Titus, who shares that when he was a boy, something similar happened. A shepherd got lost, and when they searched for him, all they found was his skull completely without flesh. After sharing this with Zach, they climb into the truck to leave, but the truck suffers a strong short circuit, seriously damaging its entire electrical system, making it unable to function. To make matters worse, the radio communicator in that location fails to pick up any signal. They can only hear some static noises. A few hours later, a plane flies by, and Zach panics, thinking the pilot didn't see them, while the others remain calm. Magda tells him to calm down, as they are sure the pilot saw them and will send a truck to rescue them within 1 or at most 2 days. Later, Magda inflates an emergency tent and distributes supplies. On the other hand, Kurt collects the bones and puts them in the truck. He also installs some lights. In the middle of the night, Kurt wakes up Titus, saying it's his turn to watch. He then grabs a sleeping bag and goes to rest while Titus sits on a rock and watches everyone. During the night, at a certain moment, he hears something and tries to see what it is. We also see that Zach's device starts beeping and sending some kind of signal. At that moment, Titus tries to wake Kurt, who doesn't respond, so he opens Kurt's sleeping bag and finds him trembling, with the skin of his face torn off and a strange black substance spreading all over his body. Titus quickly screams for help, and suddenly his arm is also caught and corroded by the substance. Carl reacts quickly, shooting at the black substance, which looks like grains of sand as it advances toward him. Meanwhile, Zach and the others put Titus in the truck. Soon, Carl realizes that shooting at it with bullets is completely useless, so he grabs a can of gasoline and pours it on the strange creature. He then climbs onto the truck, takes out his lighter, and is about to throw it over the creature to burn it when Magda points a gun at Carl to stop him, claiming that if he does that, he will put everyone at risk, as they are directly above thousands of liters of fuel that could explode and kill them all at once. Zach interrupts them, saying that the creature is retreating. Magda and Mickey tend to Titus's wounds and realize that he has lost a lot of blood and will only have one chance of survival if taken to the hospital. At this moment, Zach notices that the device is picking up something and leaves the truck, pouring fuel on the sand, thinking it might repel the monster somehow. It is then that he looks to the side and sees Carl pointing the rifle in his direction, telling him to crouch, as the creature was behind him. Carl fires and hits the thing, which disintegrates, but tries to reform and pull away. Carl tries to shoot again, but Zach stops him, saying that the creature was already leaving and that it's better that way, as they didn't know what it was capable of. Carl then attacks Zach and starts, beating him until Mickey arrives and prevents them from continuing the fight, screaming that to survive, they need to work together or everything will be over. Given Titus's condition, time is essential, so Carl suggests taking him to the nearest outpost about 40 kilometers away. Magda disagrees, saying they cannot move a large man in the desert heat for 40 kilometers, and suggests leaving Titus with her in the truck while they go get help. The next morning, Zach, Carl and Mickey walk through the desolate and scorching desert for hours without seeing anything but sand as far as the eye can see. At a certain moment, Zach sees a reading on his device coming from further ahead, so they walk toward it until the reading gets stronger. However, while Zach is still explaining how his device could help them, Carl suddenly sees a sandstorm approaching rapidly, so the three hold on tightly in an attempt to survive. After the storm passes, they free themselves from the sand and see the fuel almost empty and the device destroyed. Later that night, they find a place to rest. Zach pours gasoline on the sand around to prevent the creature from getting closer. They rest under a dead tree, backs against each other. Later, Carl turns on his flashlight and sees the creature slowly approaching. They are shocked to realize that the monster has taken on Magda's face, meaning it has already devoured Magda and Titus. The creature tries to get closer to them, but cannot due to the gasoline poured on the sand. The next day, the trio wakes up to the sound of a radio transmission. This means that the truck from the first team we saw at the beginning of the movie is nearby. They head toward the sound and find the truck, as well as the piece of sandstone. Zach enters and analyzes the internal formation. He explains to the others that the creature is actually made up of a kind of extremely dangerous ants, a primitive species that should have gone extinct thousands of years ago, and they were using human bones to assume a humanoid form and survive. Soon after, the old man we saw working with Mickey at the beginning also arrives at the scene to investigate the murders. He suspects that the three are responsible for the deaths of the first team, who were diamond explorers, and of the others who were killed afterward. He believes they killed the others for the diamonds. The trio tries to explain what really happened, but the stubborn old man doesn't understand. The three are handcuffed in the truck, but Carl knocks the old man out and they manage to escape before reaching the prison. They agree to stop the creature and deduce that they are likely in search of a nest to start a new colony, so they head to the old mine. Later, they arrive at the mine and Zach manages to get an old generator working. Then they hunt the terrible creature, which doesn't take long to emerge from the shadows, and they begin to shoot at it. Carl is hit by a piece of metal and gets his leg stuck, but before the monster can kill him, Zach fires his gun, diverting the creature's attention, which runs in his direction. However, Zach notices a deep hole and at the last moment, dodges, causing the creature to fall into it. Carl and Mickey reach where Zach was, and just when they think it's all over, the creature grabs Carl's leg. Mickey and Zach try to pull Carl back, but realizing there's not much to do, Carl takes nitroglycerin from his pocket and sacrifices himself in an explosion. With the explosion, the whole place begins to collapse. Mickey and Zach find a strange organism that they realize is the controlling brain of the creature, something like the queen of the colony. Zach stabs it, and the two quickly run out of the place just in time before everything collapses on them. Outside, they realize that the old man also fell victim to the monster. The film ends with Zach and Mickey saying goodbye, as Zach puts a strange box in a taxi that came to pick up Mickey. And inside it, we see the creature's central organism, indicating that this problem will persist worldwide.